All right, every time I make a video on pragmatic martial arts or swordsmanship, I find myself stopping to make the same caveat statements over and over again. So I figured what I'd do is just this short introduction, hello, and I'll put a time index in the comments. So if you've already seen this section before, you know where to fast forward to get to, well, what's hopefully the good stuff. Or not, let me know in the comments. Or you can just fast forward until I'm not wearing the silly hat anymore. There's a visual cue. What are the caveats? Well, first and foremost, I do not consider myself any kind of expert master or qualified in any way, shape, or form to be a teacher. I'm just trying to share things that I found work and make sense for me after 45 years of studying a lot of different martial arts, which gets me to caveat number 2. Nothing I'm going to present is going to be representative of any traditional art, okay? I've studied a lot of them over the decades. I still practice and study a core set, which probably tells you what appeals to me, what works for me. There were certainly a lot more that I studied for a short period of time and moved on from because, well, for one reason or another, they weren't working for me. However, I have to say up front that I got useful, good stuff from every single one of them. So I am never going to tell you not to study what you're studying. If it's working for you, it's working for you. I also have no intention of contradicting what you're being taught, okay? I'm just adding random, hopefully useful, approachable information, insight that may or may not help you depending on what path you're on. And again, let me know how it's working in the comments. So, third caveat, not nearly as important, but my general practice is I will practice, train, anytime I get a spare couple of minutes. So most of that is going to be, especially in this day and age, solo practice, drills, kata, forms, things like that. Anytime I can, I will spar, fence, free fight. And since my focus is on pragmatic application of martial arts, my forms and drills will look like, as much as I can get them to look like, my free fighting. Train how you play. Yes. So, I also have no intention of like repeating things, lessons, basics, concepts that there are other experts already out there who can show you those a whole lot better than me. Again, I'm going to try to cherry pick some useful, unique concepts, techniques, again, stuff that's worked for me that maybe you haven't seen anywhere else, or maybe you have, or maybe you've seen it in a different presentation. Again, let me know in the comments how I'm doing and anything you might want to see. I love your feedback. I love the conversations that we're having. So, that out of the way, what's on the menu for today? Alright, now I'm planning to do a video here real soon on guard positions in Japanese swordsmanship and how they function, at least in my head, as well as how they compare to the guard positions in other styles of swordsmanship. But before I talk about that and other pragmatic concepts, I wanted to get out of the way something that I found very essential to my own practice of pragmatic fighting arts, and I call it the wall. All right, what's the wall? We have to get a little science fiction here to understand this concept. Imagine force fields and things that different things can pass through while others can't pass through. Imagine a wall. Now, you're not going to have a good angle on it with me facing you, but let's say my opponent's over here. I'm going to imagine that there is a wall perpendicular to my opponent, to that line of attack, and I'm going to be sunk partway through it. Again, it actually moves with me, but it's basically through either my center of gravity or, in its rearmost position, my rear hip. So basically here, okay? If I'm facing this way, it's here. If I'm facing you, it's like this. Now, if I'm practicing with short weapons or empty hand, even if the classical form that I'm practicing has movements where an arm or something winds up behind that wall, passing through it, okay, in one way or another, I don't practice it like that anymore. I always keep my arms and weapons in front of the wall as much as possible. So less recoil, more hands, feet, weapons, everything I can get between me and the opponent. That means better guard, that means quicker response in attack and counterattack, less opening. How does that work, though, with a Japanese sword? Well, slight variation in the rule for a longer weapon. Imagine that the blade can pass through the wall, but the tsuba cannot. What am I talking about? Well, in certain postures that we're going to talk about and certain cuts, there are arts that will bring the sword way back out of line. And there's certainly exceptions to every rule, including this one. But understanding what you're doing and what it's potentially costing you versus how it functions, yeah, we'll talk about that in other videos. But specifically when it comes to cutting with the sword, there are arts that will bring the sword quite a ways back. Okay? I never do that. Again, I imagine that the blade can pass through the wall, the tsuba cannot in any technique that I'm using. Okay? Now, that would specifically include the jodan. Sometimes when I raise myself up into the high guard, it barely looks like I'm clearing my field of vision, but I am. I am using no recoil, and you'll also notice I'm stopping in the middle just for the purpose of the demonstration so the sword doesn't go out of shot. But even on the downward, I'm not going to let the weapon go behind me unless it's an intentional shift of posture, which we'll talk about again in another video. I am opening myself up all the way on purpose. Otherwise, even techniques that are kind of large, as I said, the jodan, I'm not going to name the art, a couple of different styles of swordsmanship use it, but a cut that I really like using, the rolling cut, makiuchi, is demonstrated traditionally all the way back here off the shoulder. Now I can do that so the sword doesn't again cross that line, that wall where my rear hip is, and cut off either shoulder. But I take it even further. Most of the time when I do that cut in fencing or any of the overhead cuts, I don't even come up that far. If you look at it this way, my arm doesn't even cross my eye line. Okay? The idea is I have trained myself to be able to cut quickly in a short distance with minimal recoil, minimal overshoot recovery. So I maintain control of the weapon, keep it mostly between me and my opponent, and ready to do, well, whatever I need to do next. I'm never unintentionally opening myself up. So, yeah, and even the techniques from below, one-handed swordsmanship. You may see the blade, and even sometimes the pommel, move through the wall, but not this. Unless, again, I'm doing something very, very intentional. And it's probably going to be from outside of measure, so long distance away. All right, did that make sense? Let me know in the comments.